He was on display for everyone to see in the biggest staged perp walk I've ever seen in my career. It was absolutely unnecessary. He's been cooperative with law enforcement. He had been in custody for over a week. He waived extradition. He was cooperative at all accounts. There was no reason for the NYPD and everybody to have these big assault rifles that, frankly, I had no idea was in their arsenal.
I thought it was time to do a quick update video on Luigi Mangione, the young man accused of shooting the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. As unsurprisingly, coverage of the story is going all over the place, and I'm keeping a close eye on what's really going on and what's happened since he was arrested in Pennsylvania at a McDonald's. He's been transported over to New York. I've not seen too many comments about how much it would cost to transport one person on a single plane and helicopter journey with the amount of armed police, photographers, cameramen. It was like a Hollywood production. I don't know why he couldn't have been driven. It seems like a very disproportionate amount of funding, very over the top, to use on one man for whom allegedly this is his first offence, especially when we're in a cost of living crisis. But then we wouldn't have seen the spectacle as described in court by his attorney. And that's his newly appointed attorney, Karen Agnifilo, who's married to P. Diddy's attorney, Mark. I know, you couldn't make this up. And when he arrived for his arraignment in court in Manhattan, in chains, there was a whole crowd of photographers and protesters outside as if he was a Hollywood movie star. And during the live feed of the arraignment, Karen Agnifilo did not mince her words when it came to criticising the people trying to make an example of him.
And to have all of the press there, the media there, it was like perfectly choreographed. And what was the New York City mayor doing at this press conference? Your Honor, that just made it utterly political. And as Your Honor knows, under Lauro v. Charles, the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit has held it to be clearly established that these staged perp walks to the media, unrelated to a legitimate law enforcement objective, is unconstitutional. And I submit there was zero law enforcement objective to do that sort of perp walk. There's absolutely no need for that whatsoever. And frankly, Your Honor, the mayor should know more than anyone about the presumption of innocence that he too is afforded when dealing with his own issues. And frankly, I submit that he was just trying to detract from those issues by making a spectacle of Mr. Mangione.
For context, Mayor Adams is currently indicted for a whole load of corruption charges. He's had an allegation of sexual assault against one of his own officers, an act of violence. He's as dodgy and creepy and egotistical as it gets, and most of his staff have resigned or are under investigation. At every press conference, he's telling us Mangione is the threat to society we need to take off the streets.
I know you don't like to admit it, but I know you get on your knees and pray every night, thank God Eric is the mayor of our city.
I don't think anyone does.
You know that? You're able to ride your little bike safely through our city. No one is coming at you. You're able to hang out in the restaurant. You're able to enjoy your little restaurants. You're able to,
So his ex-police commissioner, Edward Caban, is accused of being involved in extorting restaurants with his twin brother, who has a list of violent assault allegations. And it's alleged, under Mayor Adams, they were giving fire permits to buildings that hadn't passed fire safety checks and allowing unlicensed premises to operate, like at the Mark Hotel.
I made your career. You get so many first-page stories from me. You are so excited about covering me. You are so excited covering me, you don't know what to do,
And there are consequences to this. He has a right to a fair trial, and I just want to put on the record statements that the mayor made publicly about my client. Nothing saying alleged, for example, and he said, I wanted to send a strong message with the police commissioner that we're leading from the front. I'm not going to just allow him to come into our city. I wanted to look him in the eye and state, you carried out this terrorist act in my city, the city of New York that I love.
But he went over to Israel to hang out with President Netanyahu. I wonder if he looked him in the eye, or P. Diddy for that matter.
and he wanted to show symbolism. Your Honor, he's not a symbol. He's somebody who is afforded the right to a fair trial. He's innocent until proven guilty. And the mayor was talking to jurors, future potential jurors that elected him. Those are the people that elected him, that he is talking to and calling this man a terrorist. So, Your Honor, I just want to make a record of this and put everyone on notice that this has to stop. And my client is entitled to a fair trial and the presumption of innocence. And we're going to fight these charges, whether it's in the state or federal, to the fullest extent. Thank you, Your Honor.
So we've also found out the judge in this case was married to a Pfizer CEO, leaving many asking whether he will get a fair trial. So it's no wonder even the armed cop there looked a bit confused. And speaking of the police commissioner, Jessica Tisch, her and Adams act like a little tag team. She is living for this, and she's trying to gaslight people by blaming, you guessed it, social media.
In the nearly 2 weeks since Mr. Thompson's killing, we have seen a shocking and appalling celebration of cold-blooded murder.
I don't think we've seen a celebration of murder. We've seen an indifference to this person they all want us to care about being killed.
Social media has erupted with praise for this cowardly attack.
We gotta give the people what they want.
People ghoulishly plastered posters threatening the other CEOs with an X over Mr. Thompson's picture, as though he was some sort of a sick trophy. And yesterday, the New York Post reported that some extreme activists were circulating a deck of cards with other most wanted CEOs to be targeted for assassination. These are the threats of a lawless, violent mob who would trade in their own vigilantism for the rule of law that protects us all.
I wasn't really shocked. I was waiting to see when it would really happen. Somebody's straw.
Another shooting in America?
To break the camel's back.
Yeah.
And it was allegedly Luigi. And I get it because there's a lot of worse things, and I'm actually surprised, like maybe a mother or a father, this did not like retaliate in like the same sense. I've heard some horror stories.
Mainstream media is not focusing on the fact that healthcare should not depend on how much wealth you have.
I mean, personally, if we're going with the notion that Luigi did it, and if you're assuming that, I don't feel scared. I think I share that sentiment with 99% of the people in the country, in the world, when I say I'm not scared of him if he was walking on the street today. And if you are scared,
that's how all of this
it says something about what your company or what your actions have caused normal people to go through.
We have two proceedings that we have to answer to, one of them being death eligible. So we are requesting that we get immediate discovery of all the New York City Police Department and FBI and federal and state documents. And the second thing I want to make a record of, Your Honor, is I'm very concerned about my client's right to a fair trial in this case. He's being prejudiced by some statements that are being made by government officials. Like every other defendant, he is entitled to a presumption of innocence. But unfortunately, the way this has been handled so far, his rights are being violated. And as you know, Your Honor, there's a wealth of case law guaranteeing his right to a fair trial. But none of the safeguards have been put in place yet here. In fact, it's just the opposite of what's been happening. He's a young man, and he is being treated like a human ping pong ball between two warring jurisdictions here. These federal and state prosecutors are coordinating with one another, but at the expense of him. They have conflicting theories in their indictments, and they are literally treating him like he is like some sort of political fodder, like some sort of spectacle.
Well, I heard no lies there. And so, at great expense, he's been transported to New York so they can get the glory for what they're hoping will be his conviction. And the prosecution, who asked for an adjournment of 30 days, they better have their together. Well, I think Luigi looks pretty happy with how that hearing went. So what we're going to do now is look at the actual charges and some of the evidence. When I was making my first video about this, I noticed some discrepancies in the evidence being presented, which I then edited out of my video because Luigi was found and arrested. But I'm going to go back to those discrepancies because I think I was actually right the first time. So one piece of video CCTV footage we were told was him is not included as an exhibit. When the manhunt was on, they said this was him leaving the subway, but now they're saying he took a bike to the hotel. So who was this? Is it a random person picked up by AI technology on the CCTV footage when they entered man with black jacket and a backpack? Because I'm pretty sure that's what they mean by critical investigative tools. Even though they tried to say it was good old-fashioned police work and knocking on doors. But that's not the only issue. I'm still not 100% convinced this is Luigi. Obviously, he knows if it's him or not. When he was caught, his family or friends did not recognise the person in that image. There was a discrepancy between the date he checked into the hostel, using the false ID, allegedly, and the reception area furniture, which another publication had actually picked up on.
Police released images of the person checking into a hostel on Manhattan's Upper West Side. The Journal visited the hostel and learned that those images were captured about a week before the shooting, if not earlier.
In the complaint, they said this happened on November 24th, and that this was the only time he showed his face the whole time he was in New York.
The images show round black ottomans in the hostel's lobby, consistent with earlier images that appear on the website. But this week, the lobby was lined with these rectangular benches, and an employee told the Journal that the ottomans were switched out around Thanksgiving. Investigators leaving the scene and a representative of the hostel declined to comment.
Then there's the issue of where was the grey backpack when he was checking in. Obviously, he's not wearing it here. It's a very distinctive bag and expensive, about $200 from a company called Peak Design. And it was only made up until 2019, so he must have had it with him. The company put out an Instagram post saying that their bags did not have serial numbers, and nor did they track their customers and give information to the police. According to the complaint, the shooter is wearing the bag. At around 5:35, he's captured, leaving the hostel on his way to the Midtown Hotel, the Hilton, where the CEO was shot. And he's carrying another object there which no one said anything about. So then we're told this is him on a bike. Then he's pictured at the Starbucks and on the phone. And this is all before 6:41 a.m., which is now the time of the shooting. Then the bag was left in Central Park for at least 2 days. Then they were searching the lake for a weapon. And I wonder what they'd be saying if they'd have found one. I wonder how many people report crimes that they never get this kind of investigation, because one thing you can see here is that you could probably solve every crime if you gave this much dedication to looking at CCTV. If you had a description of the subject. And that's another thing people are angry about, because why is it only this case that gets looked into? Now, this image captured on the taxi cam. The taxi, it is alleged he took to the coach station to make his getaway, shows the same jacket and outfit he was wearing when he was spotted in the McDonald's, which is different to this jacket and this jacket. But I guess we're going to find out what happened to all the other clothes or luggage he would have had for the 10 days he was allegedly stalking Brian Thompson, because they said he arrived on the 24th of November and went immediately to the vicinity of the hotel and then to his hostel. But a press release about the date of the conference that Brian was hosting wasn't published until November 26th. Maybe he has psychic powers, or he was being informed. But he said in his note to the FBI he was acting alone. Interestingly, they don't show a picture of the notebook or the note. They do show the weapon, of course. There's nothing that specifically mentions his intentions towards Brian. In August, he wrote in his notebook, quote, "The target is insurance because it checks every box." Then on October 22nd, the notebook describes an intent to whack the CEO of one of the insurance companies at its investor conference. This doesn't sound personal in any way, which, given the definition of stalking is harassing and bullying, this just is not evidence. And look at how many women go to the police when they really are being stalked with evidence, and they end up being killed because the police did nothing. Obviously, this is not legal advice. Go do your own research. The fact that he was sitting in the McDonald's in the same outfit as in that taxi CCTV shows me he wanted to be caught. And not that it was a stupid mistake. He obviously had enough money to buy a new outfit. They've also left out the bit where he said he didn't want anyone else to get hurt. And also where he said the reality is that companies such as Apple, Google, Walmart have simply gotten too powerful and continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed, e.g. Rosenthal, Moore, decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. And there's a link to the full transcript of the notebook on Ken Klippenstein's blog on my community page. So before I end the video, I want to talk about how another channel is covering and analysing this case.
And for an adult to go online and do something like that is just so unbelievably juvenile.
His name's Jeff Ostroff. I was actually disappointed because I've enjoyed watching his analysis in the past of what causes buildings to fall down and then what caused that submarine to implode. But he's totally lost me on this one. And I don't know if he just doesn't get it.
Okay, you have a problem with the healthcare system. Hey, so do we. So do I. I'm actually a customer of United Health, and I don't like the fact that my rates have gone shooting up. But you know what? You don't solve the problem by killing people or threatening people. That's like just criminal activity. You solve the problem by hitting them where it hurts the most, in their wallet. The two best ways you can hold somebody accountable is either by their wallet or by their freedom. And what I mean by that, by freedom, is if you really think they did something criminal, if you really think they ripped you off or stole from you, then you can have them charged criminally. Or you can sue them and get money that way, you know.
I hate to break it to you, Jeff, but Brian was already being sued, as was United Healthcare, by your own Department of Justice. And it did nothing to stop them. There were no repercussions. So read the room.
They call it bad faith. You can sue for 6 times damages. Or in my case, I'm just going to take my business elsewhere. I'm going to go find cheaper insurance because I'm not going to keep on paying. I'm paying $4,200 a month right now, folks. And that's like 3 times a mortgage payment for some people right there. And it just doesn't, it's not worth giving them $48,000 a year. Okay, when you're not even collecting a tenth of that every month for any kind of services or surgery or anything. And I know people always say, yeah, but what about when you have a heart attack? Then it's $500,000. Well, okay. So 2 years ago, I was only paying $2,000 a month, and then it jumped up to $3,400.
I don't know if you're going to see this, Jeff, but if you do, I'm not a troll. I just think you need to understand not everyone is like you. And I think you should speak to the Hollywood Firefighters Pension Fund about Brian conning them out of millions of dollars. Maybe you'd feel differently if it was your retirement money. But also, you're missing the point that United has a monopoly. Did you hear about the monopoly money? So it doesn't matter what company you move to because United wants to own all of them. And the DOJ are failing at stopping them. That was the point of Luigi taking action, which we all understand. And I don't agree that he's a serial killer or a narcissist, but I think the CEOs might well be. So I think you need to do a bit more research. It's just really funny that the majority of us are not going along with this line that violence doesn't solve anything when all of our countries are involved in wars and genocide and there's nothing we can do about it except try and protest, and then we're labelled a terrorist. I'm sorry you can't see it, Jeff.
Terrorism is something designed to strike fear into the hearts of non-combatant civilians, right? The general population. Nobody but a tiny class of CEOs has been made to live in fear by Luigi's actions, but nearly everybody knows what it's like to live in fear of having a necessary medical claim denied, the fear of having your life ruined or potentially ended by a stack of medical bills. And I think in a system with so much violence that's directed from the top down, it should come as no surprise when violence begins to boomerang back from the bottom up onto the 1%. Also, I would like to remind you on the subject of terrorism, nearly 3,000 Americans lost their lives on 9/11, right? This is the largest terrorist attack this country has ever seen. An estimated 190,000 people are murdered each year by our broken healthcare system. That is the equivalent of 52 9/11s worth of deaths every year. Every single week, another 9/11 happens. So I got to ask, who is the more prolific terrorist in this equation?
Another person donated $500 writing this: I hope this entire event leads to a rethinking of the wealthy people running this country. Health insurance has been a scam for far too long, and it needs to change. Stop talking about it and do something.